Week 16 is upon us, NFL fans, after the world-ending week that was Week 15 and a couple surprising outcomes that I totally did not expect because it's just the way the NFL works. We get into Week 16 with another huge matchups for playoff position in this one, and very well might be the end of the Packers, but we'll get into that with another video. But let me know what you think of the video below. Like, subscribe, all that, and let's get into it with our first game of the week, the Thursday night matchup between the Saints and the Rams. Surprising matchup. Probably wouldn't have thought this matchup would be so important at the end of the year. The Rams, Saints both vying for playoff position. The Saints coming off a huge win against the Giants, which I did not expect their offense to play that well, which is very frustrating for a Saints fan, watching their offense play so well, then the next week just completely fall apart. The Rams with a big win as well over the Commies, who just really didn't have much to give. I mean, they literally benched Sam Howell, so future quarterback averted apparently. And who will win this week? It is in LA, so maybe that gives LA the edge, but I think the Saints can win this game, but again, it always comes down to their offense. Which offense for the Saints are you going to get every week? And we never really know. We never really know which Derek Carr is going to show up, which receivers are going to actually catch the ball, and just what defense is going to show up as well. I mean, when the defense plays well, the Saints have a much better chance of winning. For the Rams, Matt Stafford has been heating up for a while. Cooper Kupp, again, is just fantastic as always. Puka Nacua is slowly falling behind. He's definitely that second receiver spot now, unfortunately, when he started out the season so well. What is going to happen? I think I'll give it to the Rams, just because I think the Rams have been a little more consistent, although the Saints can definitely win for sure. I'll give it to the Rams 24-21. With the caveat that the Saints could definitely win and really go a long way to helping them stay in the playoff race. A loss here by either team could put a huge nick in their playoff chances, so it'll be an interesting match for sure, and hopefully a good Thursday game for a change. Next. Next, we have Cincinnati and Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh coming off 4 straight losses where they just look worse and worse every week. No Kenny Pickett again. And the Bengals coming with the comeback win against the Vikings when they were almost assuredly going to lose going into the fourth. They come back and beat the Vikings. And I got to give it to the Bengals. Jake Browning has been good. He hasn't made a lot of mistakes. And that is what has kept them in games and helped stay in the playoff race. Now, they definitely need to win again this week, of course, and it is in Pittsburgh, so maybe Pittsburgh surprises and pulls off a win when they just haven't looked good the last month. They've actually looked pretty terrible, and to be honest, Mike Tomlin probably needs to go. Yes, they've been successful. They haven't had a losing record at all during his time there, but what have they won? They made the playoffs like 3 times in the last 7 or 8 years, and they've all been like first round exits, so what's the point if you just make it to the playoffs and lose in the first round? Is that really success? No, it's not really success at all. The Bengals are just looking good. Their defense is looking feisty, although they did seem to suffer a lot of injuries last week, which of course happens all the time. But I think Cincinnati definitely wins this one by a good margin. Let's say 28-17. And even 17 points for the Steelers, it might be generous because, boy, with Mitch Trubisky out there, and then crappy Najee Harris, just Trent Richardson him out of the NFL. Cincinnati wins this one, keeps their playoff odds alive, and really puts the final nail in the Steelers, to be honest. I think that if the Steelers lose this game, it's going to be really hard for them to get back to any feasible playoff position. Next. Buffalo and the Chargers. Buffalo coming off that big win over Dallas where they just utterly dominated them in all facets of the game. The Chargers getting absolutely dominated in all facets of the game by the Raiders. Maybe the Chargers having a couple of extra days rest will help them, but probably not. I don't think the Chargers really have any chance And let's go on to this being a Peacock exclusive game. Really? Why are we doing exclusive games where you have to buy a service to watch it? I mean, I know it's been that way for Amazon Prime for a while, but a lot of people are willing to get Amazon Prime because you'll get the rest of the games all year and you still get it, or the Prime Video, you still get the Prime Video with Amazon Prime, so why not? Even though the games on Thursday night haven't been good, and this is one game, you get one extra game for a service that, let's be honest, is really not worth owning, to be honest. And it's just frustrating. I know that's just the way money goes, but it's stupid. And for a playoff matchup like this, at least for one team, that really sucks. But the Bills, I think, are going to win this one pretty handily. Their offense has been doing great ever since firing Ken Dorsey. Their running attack looks unstoppable. Their defense is looking really fierce, and they're blitzing with effectiveness in just about every time and really causing havoc. And Josh Allen has been an underrated MVP candidate. Even though he probably won't win, he nonetheless has done very well. Didn't throw an interception last week and didn't really need to play all that well because the running attack was so fierce. I like the Bills to win this one 28-14, and that might be generous for the Chargers, even though they were able to score a little bit at the end of the game last week, but that's just more a fact of the Raiders taking their foot off the gas. But yeah, Buffalo will win this one pretty easily, to be honest. Next, we have Washington and the Jets. A horrible game. Of course, the Jets getting absolutely dominated by Miami last week. Washington losing to the Rams and not looking very good either. What a terrible game to watch. I definitely won't be watching this one. Who wins, to be honest? I don't know. I really don't know. When the Cowboys were playing well with Jacoby Brissett last week, maybe they showed they could actually win in the future. It'd be nice just to see Jacoby Brissett get a nice little bit of run time. Although I still think Sam Howell is the future for the Commies, even though we didn't have a good game last week. I still think he has more than enough skill to start for the Commies going forward. The Jets, yes, their defense is strong, but their offense is just terrible. I mean, literally Zach Wilson was playing through concussion symptoms last week as long as he possibly could, which, if you're the NFL, you should have your ears perked up to that, because that's not a good thing. If you want to claim protecting players from themselves, he should not have been in there, because even when he was in there, he just looked terrible. They could not get anything going. Every time I looked to see on the bottom line of another game where they were at, it was always like 3rd and 13 at the Jets 20. They barely made, I don't think they made it across the midfield more than once or twice. And yeah, they just look terrible. The Commies are still a terrible team, but I think they have a little bit more. McLaurin had a good game last week. Maybe Brian Robinson can come back and play in this game. I'm going to give it to the Commies, but I don't feel very good about it because of that Jets defense. But that offense in the Jets is terrible, and I think the Commies have just a little bit more to work with. But frankly, this is a true toss-up game. Washington wins, so 17-14. Next, we have Detroit and Minnesota. Minnesota with no loss last week, of course, against the Bengals. Detroit with a stirring and rousing win over the Denver Broncos, where Sean Payton called the Detroit Lions a CFL team, crying like a baby, like he has been a lot lately. The Lions looked really strong going ahead. Their defense, I still think it has some questions. Their secondary still has some questions. They are able to rush the quarterback, of course, and I think they'll be able to do that pretty well this week. But the Vikings, maybe they can still hang in there in the playoff race. They're still in. And Tyson Chandler had a great game last week. Nick Mullins, not so much. Had some good moments, but had a couple of bonehead turnovers that really changed the game. I think the Lions win this one. It is in Minnesota, so maybe Minnesota plays up and their fans get into it a little bit. But frankly, Detroit has been playing so well of late, I have to give it to Detroit. I can't see a scenario where Minnesota wins unless they're able to force Jared Goff into some turnovers. That's the only way I think they win. Detroit flies high again, winning 31-17. It may be a little closer than that, to be honest, but Minnesota has been really hard to pick the past couple of weeks. You never know what you're going to get, and Detroit has been so strong. Detroit wins this game. Next, we have Cleveland and Houston. Cleveland, again, with the big comeback win over the Bears last week. Yes, they're the Bears, but a win is a win. And with Joe Flacco, you're winning games, and the defense is still holding strong. Then we have Houston, who managed to win last week with Case Keenum, because the Tennessee, although after starting off pretty well, just fell apart in the end, and Derrick Henry couldn't get anything going, and Houston won in overtime. So this is kind of a toss-up again. Both teams, of course, vying for a playoff position. And even if either of these teams lose, they should still be have a pretty good shot at the playoffs. But a loss for either team would certainly hurt. Honestly, it depends on if C.J. Stroud plays. If C.J. Stroud plays, I think the Houston Texans should be able to win. Their defense has been strong, even though they were missing a lot of players last week. And Cleveland, although Joe Flacco's been doing well, this might be the game where he finally loses. But to be honest, it's a real toss-up. This is a really good and interesting game to look forward to. I think I will give it to the Browns right now, just because I don't know if C.J. Stroud is going to play. And the Browns move one step closer to really securing that playoff spot. I mean, even a win this week might really help them lock up a spot. But we'll see. I think the Browns win 20-17. It's going to be a close game. And honestly, the end result could change depending on if C.J. Stroud is able to play. But for now, the Browns win 20-17. Mark it. Seattle and Tennessee. Tennessee, of course, with the bad performance against Houston last week. And Seattle with a rousing win on Monday night over the Eagles. Now Seattle looks like they have a good shot at making the playoffs now. When we really thought their chances were dead going into the Philadelphia, they managed to win, and they played well, and they deserve a shot at the playoffs for sure now. Kenny Walker is looking better and better, so that's definitely a plus. When Kenny Walker wasn't out there, as good as Zach Charbonnet can be at times, they were just missing an extra step with Walker out there. And Tennessee, who knows what Derrick Henry is going to get. Sad to see that his career or his dominant period might be truly coming to an end after last week's really poor performance. I'm going to have to give it to Seattle. It is in Tennessee, so maybe Tennessee can win, but their offense has been really unpredictable. I mean, Will Levis has had some good games this year, but he just gets stuck at times. Doesn't necessarily have turnovers, but just isn't able to move the ball effectively. And since Derrick Henry wasn't able to run the ball last week, that's where they really failed. I think Seattle wins and moves that much closer to a playoff spot this week, winning 24-21, and that might be generous for the Titans considering what their offense was last week. But I'll give it to Seattle, moving one step closer to the playoffs. And Tennessee, sadly, probably seeing the end of Derrick Henry, which is really sad to say. Next, we have Indianapolis and the Falcons. Falcons with the disappointing loss to Atlanta. Again, not using Bijan Robinson is a crime. So maybe he still was a good running back. He obviously is still a good running back, but coaching and just usage have varied wildly. And just Falcons just need to get rid of Arthur Smith. It's just plain obvious he needs to go. Indianapolis with the big win over Pittsburgh. They started off losing last week, but then they rolled off a 30-0 streak to end the game, and they kind of dominated the Steelers towards the end. And hopefully Michael Pittman is able to play, even though he just got killed last week, just absolutely killed. I don't think Jonathan Taylor will play this week. I think it has been 3 weeks, so maybe he's able to play. Who knows? We'll see what time. But I still am going with Indianapolis. And I think if the Falcons lose this week, they're pretty much out of the race. I mean, technically they're still in because it's the NFC, and 2 wins in a row at this point could go a long way to helping them make it to the playoffs. But I don't know. I'm just not seeing it. They don't look very good. And yeah, I'm going to give it to Indy. Even though it's in Atlanta, Indy has been pretty strong. Their defense has been pretty good. And Gardner Minshew has been great. He hasn't really made a lot of mistakes, and that's going to go a long way to helping them win the game and really lock up a playoff spot. Indy wins 24-17. Next, we have Jacksonville and Tampa Bay. Jacksonville reeling with 3 straight losses. Man, it's really unfortunate with Trevor Lawrence getting hurt. And, I mean, he's still playing, but I think he looks a little hurt at times. Tampa Bay with the big win over the Packers because the Packers don't know how to play defense, and their coach thinks playing off each receiver by 20 yards with a linebacker is the way to success. Obviously, as football fans, we know that's not going to lead to success more times than not. And Tampa Bay looks really strong to make a playoff spot too. They still have the matchup against the Saints coming up that could go a long way to deciding whether they get in or not, because probably for all NFC South teams, the division is the way to get in. But Jacksonville has not looked great, and they're slowly reeling. I think they're even in second place or tied for first right now with Houston, so that definitely hurts after the way they started the season. I mean, they've been nothing short of fantastic, but the last couple of weeks they have been anything but. And hopefully Trevor Lawrence is able to get it in this week. ETN needs to get going. They need to get balls to Calvin Ridley. And frankly, their defense has been the big issue. Their defense hasn't been able to stop anything, giving up loads of yards, giving up loads of points. They have not kept their team in games. And Tampa Bay has been looking strong. Baker Mayfield has had a great game last week, first perfect passer rating in Lambeau history, which is a real shame. I mean, never happened in the 70s for the Packers, but we'll see what happens. I think I'll go with Jacksonville. To end the streak and get back into their winning ways in time for the playoffs. But honestly, I think this is another toss-up. Jacksonville wins 24-20, but it's going to be a really close game going down to the wire. Next, we have one of the best games of the week, Dallas and Miami. Now, this game is huge for both teams. Dallas needs to keep up in that race for the NFC East. Miami needs to keep ahead of Buffalo because they have that loss against Buffalo earlier in the season. With the way Buffalo's been playing, Buffalo could probably beat Miami right now. Who knows what's going to happen with Tyreek Hill? I bet he, after a week of rest, probably is able to go this week. For their sake, they definitely are going to need it because Dallas, coming off one of the worst offensive performances of the year, are going to look to play very well this week, and I think they can definitely do it against Miami's good but at sometimes suspect defense. I like Dak to really get it going this week. CeeDee Lamb should have a big week. Tony Pollard should be able to get it going, and their defense should not be eviscerated like they were last week, to be honest. But also, maybe it could, because Mostert has been playing very well, racking up touchdowns left and right, and he's just been a very effective runner for most of the year. So it's going to be a big game. Tua hasn't had the greatest of games lately, but he had a pretty good game last week. Waddle has been pretty good as well, stepping up for Tyreek Hill being out. But it's going to be a really close game. I like Dallas to get the win and get back to their winning ways, just because Miami has not been able to beat any good teams this year. And until they beat a good team, I'm just not going to be on Miami's side in big games such as this. Dallas wins 27-24. It's going to be a very close game, a very well-matched game throughout, very high-scoring one at that. But Dallas prevails and stays up in the NFC East race and gets back to their winning ways. A tank bowl if I've ever seen one, with Arizona versus Chicago. Arizona lighting it up last week against San Francisco's defense. Even though they gave up a lot of points and ultimately lost by like 16, Arizona looked pretty darn good at times. James Conner was moving the ball. Murray had a pretty decent game, all things considered, and they were just able to move the ball very well against one of the better defenses in the league. Chicago with the loss against Cleveland, Chicago had at times looked like they were really going to win. Maybe if one play goes their way, it's a completely different story, and they're still in the playoff race. But I just don't like Chicago. Probably need to fire their coach at the end of the year. Justin Fields probably is still their best option at quarterback. Don't draft another quarterback. And this is as a Packers fan. If you want to continue to progress to the franchise, you need to keep and stay with Justin Fields, to be honest. Caleb Williams is not going to bring new fortune to your team. He's a total crybaby. And, yeah, I think Justin Fields is still your best option. There are other areas in your team that definitely need upgrades. And if you want to continue growing, you need to upgrade the offensive line further, and maybe a couple or a safety or two or a corner or two would go a long way to helping your team continue to grow, because I think a lot of the issues for the Bears has been coaching, to be honest. Although Justin Fields has looked suspect at times, I still like him best than any Caleb Williams could do, but should be a closely matched game. I like Arizona to win, but it is in Chicago. It is in December, so maybe Chicago's able to get one more win this year. But I will go with Arizona for now, 24-21. Their offense has been looking pretty good lately, and another loss for the Bears. New England and Denver, Sunday night game. What a terrible game, to be honest. Denver coming off that big loss against Detroit last week. New England coming off a loss against KC, which at times they had a chance to win, but of course their offense can't really compete with the Chiefs, even though they were able to get a pick here and there and keep it close at halftime. Denver should get back to their winning ways this week. It is in Denver. But, I mean, Sean Payton didn't look very great last week, calling the Lions a CFL team after getting absolutely destroyed. You just look like a giant crybaby. The offense has been kind of suspect of late. I mean, Russell Wilson, after having that good run in the middle of the season, has not looked great lately. Didn't have a lot of interceptions last week, but just didn't look very good moving the ball. The running game has not been so good. They still have a chance to make the playoffs, and a win here would definitely go a long way to doing that against prime, good competition. Good time to stick it to the Patriots. I think Denver wins 20-17. Should be a pretty close game for most of the game. Wouldn't be surprised if New England pulls off the win and really takes a dig at Denver's playoff chances, but Denver wins for now in a closely fought match. Next we have Las Vegas and Kansas City. Las Vegas looking great last week against Chargers, putting up some of the most points we've ever seen in a Thursday night game. Kansas City coming off the win over Kansas City. And again, their offense is still not looking great. Kadarius Toney is just a disaster, and he should not be allowed to touch the ball ever. He's just been a disaster or like a year ago, after saying, like, oh my God, Kadarius Toney is going to be this big secret weapon for Kansas City. He's going to do everything. It was like, he cannot stay offsides or onside. He cannot do that. He can't catch, and he just doesn't look good for most of the games. So really take him out of the game. Although you need some playmakers, he's just not good news. Las Vegas, like I said, with the win, their offense has been looking great. Their defense has been really underrated, and they've really been able to rush the quarterback. Max Crosby is a true beast. I think Kansas City wins this game, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than people think. Although we have seen in the past where Kansas City has absolutely torched Las Vegas. I don't think it's going to be in this game because their defense has been much better of late. And Kansas City's offense is still not looking strong. I mean, they have some pieces, but they're really missing that key playmaker like a Tyreek Hill. Like, oh, if only, again, I've said before, the Chiefs would go back in time and give Tyreek Hill that blank check and keep him on the team. How much better would the Kansas City Chiefs be? But we can't go back in time. But I think Kansas City wins 27-24. It's going to be a closely fought match. I think the Raiders do have a real chance to win this one, but it all depends on how well Patrick Mahomes plays in this game and how well their defense plays as well. But Chiefs win 27-24, but the Raiders have a shot to win. Next, we have the Giants and the Eagles. Eagles with 3 straight losses. Like, what the hell is going on? Giants with the big loss over New Orleans. I'd like to say Philadelphia gets it back going, but who knows? Who knows what's wrong? I mean, the offense is basically the same that was last year. Obviously, their defense isn't the same, and their defense has been pretty darn terrible the last couple weeks. But I'm going to go with the Eagles in this one. I think they'll get back on track. To be honest, if they do lose, boy, who knows how far they can fall, because the Eagles have not looked good. And that loss on Monday night, yes, there were a couple of penalties that probably should have been called, but the Eagles should have won going away last week, and they just couldn't keep winning. They couldn't keep ahead. And yeah, I will go with the Eagles on this one, but with the way the Giants have been this year at times, I wouldn't be surprised if the Giants win. Eagles win 27-17. Last but not least, we have the game of the week, Baltimore versus San Francisco, a potential Super Bowl preview, if you will. Baltimore looking strong again last week with a win over Jacksonville. San Francisco with a big win for Arizona, even though at times their defense got really torched at times, giving up over 400 yards total and over 200 yards on the ground. That's definitely not good if you're the San Francisco defense. That's not a good look for sure against Arizona. But it's going to be a very close fought game. Probably a battle of who might win the MVP. Even though Lamar Jackson has been fantastic of late. I mean, he didn't pass for a lot last week. Not like you would think he would against a team defense like Jacksonville. But he did get a lot of yards on the ground, and they were able to win. San Francisco their offense looks fantastic. Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Brock Purdy, and of course the engine that makes it all go, Christian McCaffrey, and an underrated MVP candidate, Trent Williams. Trent Williams has really solidified that offensive line, and really a big reason for why San Francisco's been doing well, and also a big reason for when he was out why San Francisco was losing 3 straight. San Francisco looks great. I think they win this one, and they get the win, 28-24. San Francisco wins in the end, but it's going to be a very close match, and I think it's a real toss-up. Baltimore could truly win this game, but I think I'll go with San Francisco for now. Let me know what you think in the comments, what's going to happen with each game this week, and have a great day. God bless. Go Pack Go, and Merry Christmas.